Very good evening to you, and welcome to this evening's edition of Politics 101. Late start this evening, some technical difficulties on our platform. These things happen, as you know, from time to time. Welcome again to Politics 101. This evening, we will be talking about that matter that was filed by Christopher Jones challenging the constitutionality of the government's appointment of Mr. Clifton Hickens as the acting commissioner of police. As you know, that matter was filed on behalf of Mr. Christopher Jones, the lawyers Roysdale Forde and Selwyn Peters. We are going to be discussing that case. Of course, it's a matter before the court, and so we are not going to be violating the norms. You know, when a matter is before the court, there is a limit to which one can engage the specifics of the case, but the lawyers know that very well. So welcome to Politics 101, wherever you are. Later on, we expect Mr. Lincoln Lewis of the Village Voice to drop in, and we'll try to talk with him. So wherever you are on this eve of our independence anniversary, I want to thank you for joining us. And it's been a hectic week, of course, lots of news, lots of activity. As we said, tomorrow it's going to be the 56th, the observance of the 56th independence anniversary. You know, Guyana became independent in 1966 on May 26th, and we every year we have celebrated or observed the anniversary of our independence, and we are doing so again tomorrow. Since the PPP has come to power, you know, it has been shutting out the opposition from these events. You know, independence, as we know, it's a national event. It's a national event, and we are accustomed to having that event be treated as such. But as we have noted, an exhibition to mark independence by the Burnham Foundation was turned away. By the National Library, ostensibly because it clashed with an exhibition by the National Library. The consensus by almost everyone of a certain persuasion is that there was the hidden hand, or not so hidden hand, of the People's Progressive Party government behind the decision. We haven't seen a statement from the National Library yet. But anyhow, tonight, as we said, we are going to be discussing the Hickens case. Hickens case tonight, and then, like I said, later on, Mr. Lincoln Lewis is going to be joining us. So welcome Welcome to Politics 101. Wherever you're joining us, whether you're from inside of Guyana, whether you're there physically or you're not, welcome to Politics 101. I think Mr. Roysdale Forde is ready with us, so we'll start the interview immediately because we've lost some time because of some technical difficulties. Mr. Forde, good evening. We're getting some feedback there.
Good evening, Dr. Hines. Thank you for having me on your show.
And you're welcome. How are you?
Dr. Hines?
Yes, I'm here. I'm seeing you. I'm hearing you. Are you hearing me? Yeah, you know, there's a difficulty there, but Roysdale Forde is there, and we expect Mr. Selwyn Peters to join us. And then later on, we're going to be joined by Mr. Lincoln Lewis. Welcome. We are going to have our program tonight. We know there are difficulties that we have. Rockcliffe, welcome. Michael, Lynette, Audrey, Janice, June, Margot, George, Denise, Vibert White, the man from Grove, I think, Denise, Yvonne McPherson, Cecile Ogle, welcome. Our man up there on the quarantine, Albert Morgan. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101, Sharon, Orin. There are several Denise here tonight. Denise Ned, Rosie, Rose, welcome to Politics 101. Denise Booker is here, my country girl. Joan McDonald. Joan is always here with us every evening. June Peters, welcome to Politics 101. And we're waiting for them to sort out some technical problems we're having. You know, they're always interfering with these platforms, trying their best to interfere. Welcome, Maria Alicock. Welcome to Politics 101. My sister Lynette Zephyr is on. Rhonda, who is a fixture on these programs. Good evening to you, Rhonda. Hope all is well out there in Denamstel on the west coast of Demerara. Good evening, Sandra. And Cletus, Best. I notice here there are quite a few people on. Carol, see my brother Yuri Westmus is on. Welcome to Politics 101. Tonight we are going to be discussing that appointment of Mr. Clifton Hickens as Commissioner of Police, Acting Commissioner of Police. As you know, the government went ahead and made that announcement, and there people raised several objections. Mr. Forde, are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you now.
Okay, wonderful. I was introducing the show and talking about the decision by the National Library. I see Selwyn Peters is here with us too, Mr. Peters. The National Library making that decision to cancel a pictorial exhibition of Forbes Burnham by the Burnham Foundation at the last moment. Do you have any comment to make on that issue? Does it smell a little bit fishy to you?
I of course, Dr. Hines, thank you for allowing me and inviting me to comment on that issue. I believe that that is the hands of the government intervening to prevent the propagation of this seed of the role of Forbes Burnham in the independence of Guyana. The PPP has long felt that Forbes Burnham is not entitled to a position of prominence in the history of Guyana as it relates to the independence of Guyana. I believe it's very unfortunate when your president speaks about one Guyana. The clock didn't start in 2022 in August in terms of the one Guyana. We have to go back to the genesis of the creation of Guyana as a nation state, and both Forbes Burnham and we cannot deny the role that Chetty Jagan played in contributing to the independence of Guyana. So it's very unfortunate that a national institution such as the National Library will be manipulated by the government. This institution falls under the direct control, I believe, of Charles Ramson, who is the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports, and I believe that library may fall under his control. And if I'm wrong, maybe certainly should fall under the control of the Minister of Education. And I believe that both of them should take some responsibility for this very unfortunate decision.
Thank you. Selwyn Peters, are you hearing me?
I can hear you.
Yes, my brother. Any comments on the National Library's decision to discontinue permission that was given for an exhibition on Forbes Burnham to mark Independence Day?
Well, I echo the views that Mr. Forde did, and certainly it seemed to be bad faith. And at least the show must go on. So I understand that it's the main grid now, so people will still get the benefit from the exhibits and whatever other cultural aspects they are that form part of the exhibition. But certainly the National Library should not have done that at the last moment. And if they've done it at the last moment, they should have at least give them an alternative rather than just toss them up onto the street like that. Very disrespectful.
Yes. Okay. Let's move to the matter at hand tonight. And Roysdale, let me start with you. You and Mr. Peters, on behalf of Mr. Christopher Jones, have moved to the court to challenge the appointment of Mr. Clifton Hickins as Commissioner of Police, acting Commissioner of Police. First of all, why did you all see it fit to pursue this matter in court?
Well, Dr. Hines, the appointment of the Commissioner of Police, as provided for in the Constitution, Article 211, requires that the person, either a substantive commissioner or any person acting as the Commissioner of Police, must be appointed after meaningful consultation between the President and the Leader of the Opposition and the Chairman of the Police Service Commission after consulting with the Police Service Commission. We had a situation which was extremely unfortunate, whereby the President proceeded to appoint Mr. Hickins as the acting Commissioner of Police without consulting either with a sitting opposition leader at the time or without consulting with any chairman of the Police Service Commission. So what we had in effect, Dr. Hines, was a unilateral appointment in a flagrant violation of the Constitution, which resulted in the Constitution clearly not being complied with, and Mr. Hickins being appointed as the acting Commissioner of Police. To today's date, I can't find any documentation issued under the government. I've searched, maybe it exists somewhere, but I have not found it as yet. I've checked all the usual places, but I haven't found it. Any document evidencing the formal appointment of Clifton Hickins as the Commissioner of Police or as the acting Commissioner of Police. So in those circumstances, we had extensive research done, and we decided that having regard to what we found and the obvious breach of the Constitution, that the argument advanced by the president, one of relying on the doctrine of necessity, could not be relied on in these circumstances and could not be used to excuse or to explain or justify what would be a clear breach of the letter of the Constitution. And in those circumstances, we felt required and compelled as citizens of this country and as Guyanese people and of lawyers, of course, to stop this act by the president and by the PPP.
Seven Peters, let me bring you in here. Roysdale cited the doctrine of necessity. Is the doctrine of necessity not compelling enough to override all the other requirements of the Constitution for the appointment of an acting commissioner of police? A country needs a commissioner of police always. Why the doctrine of necessity doesn't kick in here?
Well, it doesn't kick in here for a number of reasons. The first reason is that we had from August of 2020 to January of 2022 to appoint an acting commissioner of police or a substantive commissioner of police. At that point in time, we had at least up to August of 2021, we had a police service commission, right? The police service commission wasn't consulted. The leader of the opposition wasn't consulted in all those months in respect to the appointment of the service commission, the judicial service commission, integrity commission. The president chose not to consult with any of the persons that he needed to meaningfully consult to make these appointments. And so he cannot now use the absence of a leader of the opposition or the absence of a police service commission to inform the doctrine of necessity, especially where in these circumstances he failed to consult for more than a year. And further, there was no exigent circumstance. The police tradition holds that where the commissioner of police goes on leave, such as this case, the next person in line, Deputy Commissioner Williams, acts in the capacity and performs the function, and that's exactly what Hoppy did since Leslie James went on leave. You know, Leslie James went on leave, and the president no steps to point and acted as substantive commissioner of police. So, you know, it's not worth a hill of beans, the justification that was proffered to use the doctrine of emergency, the doctrine of necessity. And so, you know, it was a tool that was designed to circumvent the Constitution. And so it needs to be ventilated in court, and it needs to be ruled upon.
Roysdale, let me bring you in. We heard your brother Selwyn making the case that there seems to have been a political move to circumvent the Constitution because the government had more than a year and a half to make the appointment, and they didn't make the appointment. They waited until there was the transition period from one opposition leader to the other. And then there's the issue of the absence of a police service commission. How important is that?
The absence of the police service commission was one of the reasons why the president felt compelled to seek to justify his appointment under the doctrine of necessity. The Police Service Commission is a constitutional commission established under the Constitution to ensure that appointments are made to the police force, and in the instance of the appointment of a commissioner or a deputy commissioner of police, the chairman of that commission engages in consultation with the other members of the commission and then engages in consultation with the president, in order to meaningful consultation with the president. So the existence of the Police Service Commission was necessary for the effective and lawful appointment of a deputy commissioner of police or a commissioner of police. So the president is relying, Irfan is relying on the need for this doctrine of necessity to justify what is clearly a breach of the Constitution that cannot be excused.
A breach of the Constitution that cannot be excused. I see a question here. What took so long for the opposition to move to the court? Can you clear up some things? I know when you were here the last time on this show, you did address this question, Roysdale, but if you can again, why did it take so long, as they're asking here, for the matter to be brought before the court?
Well, you know, Dr. Hines, as I keep indicating on these shows, and I will continue, I ask the citizens and the members of the public who follow these matters to understand that these things require in-depth research and in-depth analysis. You may come to a particular conclusion as a scientist, because law is a social science. You may come to a conclusion, but you have to engage in a process of fact-finding and deduction to justify the conclusion that you would have come to. You can't institute proceedings on the whims and fancies and only on a conclusion. And in the way in which law operates as a science, which it is, and the common law principles that govern law, you have to engage in research that identify appropriate and similar cases that would govern this situation. And let me be very clear about it, Dr. Hines. The situations that we find happening in Guyana, they're very abnormal. They are not things that would be find happening in the usual run-of-the-mill places. They're not things that you would find in the usual orthodox textbooks published in established democracies of the world. You have to do extensive studies and research to find the aberrations, the manifestations of malfunctioning systems and governments. And that is itself quite a task to undertake. So when I file a matter, and when my colleague, Mr. Peters and I come together and we file a matter, it is because we have come to the conclusion that we are not only justified in our feeling and our conclusion, but in a context of independent analysis and justification, it is sound. We would have also engaged in research by attorneys throughout the Commonwealth, in Africa, and in the Commonwealth Caribbean to deal with these situations. So we understand and appreciate that it's not simply about filing a matter. It's about filing a matter that will create the result that you want and to be the sort of precedent. Because it is useless to file a matter just for filing its sake and the court dismiss it because the court comes to the conclusion that the law does not support you. What happens in those circumstances, Dr. Hines, is that a government like the PPP will feel further emboldened to engage in further acts of breaching the Constitution, further acts of malfunctioning government. And therefore, that is why we would institute proceedings on the basis of the conclusion that we would arrive at, on the basis of an analysis of law that we would have found. So that is why it would take some time, and I will continue to let the public understand that it is serious work. As I said on the last occasion, serious law is not easy law. As my mentor, Dr. Hines, Mr. McKay would say, Dr. Hines, good law and good research, Mr. McKay, senior counsel, would say, is not instant coffee. You don't pull up at the supermarket, buy Nescafe, mix it with water, and stir it up. It is hours and hours and hours of work that people do not see and can't even fathom sometimes, that you spend so many hours to put into 4 paragraphs sometimes of work.
Thank you so much there, Attorney Roysdale Forde. We are discussing tonight, of course, the matter that was filed on behalf of the Chief Whip of the APNU AFC, challenging the appointment of the acting Commissioner of Police, Mr. Clifton Hickins, and the grounds under which this matter is being challenged are constitutional. They are making the case that there is a breach of the Constitution on the part of the opposition, on the part of the president. As you know, when a matter is before the court, we can't get into the details of the matter, so we are discussing context and to give you a sense as to why this case is being challenged and so forth. Mr. Peters, let me bring you in here. Expertise is important in any area of public life. And people like to know that those who are dealing with a case have the expertise. I seem to think that, I think that your name has been associated with a number of cases that have to do with police. So obviously you have some experience and expertise in dealing with matters with the police. How has that long experience of dealing with matters with the police helped in the preparation for this case?
Well, it did help because I was able to draw upon the traditions and the customs of the Guyana Police Force in terms of making the argument that Mr. Williams could have acted in the capacity as Commissioner of Police while an opposition leader was appointed, because you'll recall that I was the lawyer who cross-examined the Commissioner of Police, Silat Prasad, in the Commission of Inquiry chaired by Paul Slow, where the Commissioner of Police at the time, Silat Prasad, insisted that the only qualification to act as Commissioner of Police when a Commissioner of Police is not in the seat is you being the next senior person. And Paul Williams was the most senior person. And that became a compelling, that is going to be compelling evidence that certainly put to bed the president's reliance on the doctrine of necessity. You had a deputy commissioner in place who was the next senior person. He was appointed by instrument of a president. He is the most senior person in the Guyana Police Force. He could have he was the next person behind Hoppy in seniority. He could have acted in Hoppy's stead while Hoppy's on pre-retirement leave until meaningful consultations take place between the president, the leader of the opposition, and a chairman of the police or chair lady of the Police Service Commission. So experience in constitutional law matters and police law matters certainly comes into play here. And I was also a lawyer who dealt with the Pakistani situation in 1999 when General Musharraf took over. He took over Pakistan using the doctrine of necessity. And the Pakistani Supreme Court upheld that at the time because Pakistan was certainly in a different state of affair, and the Prime Minister at the time, Musharraf Sharif, he had taken some actions that put the state in peril, and so the doctrine of necessity was justified then. And the doctrine of necessity was justified using the test that emanated from Grenada, the Grenada case that you cited earlier. So expertise in constitutional law matters, in public law, administrative law, and police law matters are integral to these kind of cases because obviously, as Roysdale Forde said, when you're launching these challenges, You're preparing the foundation for it to go all the way to the Caribbean Court of Justice. And the pleadings are most important, or the facts underlying the case are fundamentally important. So you have to draft the thing carefully. And so we spent a lot of time studying this stuff, doing legal opinions. And Roysdale is right. I mean, in these cases, there's so many lawyers behind the scenes from all over the Commonwealth that are involved in helping out. You'd be amazed to know who the lawyers are behind the scenes, but they're very senior lawyers. We need junior lawyers on these cases. We don't have junior lawyers. It's mostly senior lawyers working at the front end and behind the scenes on these matters. So yes, my experience in policing, in police law, certainly helped a lot in terms of framing the issues, identifying the issues, and dealing with it as it is.
So, Selwyn, let me press you here for the purposes of clarity and education, because as a teacher, whatever I do, whether public or in the classroom, I'm teaching. And you cited two cases there. You cited the Pakistani case of General Musharraf, and you cited the Grenada case, both cases that I'm familiar with as a student of politics and so forth. But what I want you to do is to, what circumstances, what are the circumstances under which the doctrine of necessity can take it? In other words, what are the limits of the use of this doctrine of necessity? In what circumstances can it be used?
Okay, so no other circumstances could exist. So, for example, in this particular case, if you didn't have a convention in the Guyana Police Force where you have a deputy commissioner of police who was acting, remember Hoppy was acting in the capacity of commissioner of police, and he's done that since July of 2020 to 2022 when he went off on his pre-retirement leave. So you have another deputy commissioner who could have filled that lacuna. There was no lacuna. There was another deputy commissioner to fill that spot. If there wasn't another deputy commissioner to fill that spot, if there wasn't a convention in the Guyana Police Force, that deputy commissioner would have stepped in and act in that capacity until a substantive or acting commissioner is appointed following meaningful consultations, as the Constitution prescribed in 211. And there were social disorder or some other exigent circumstance that does not exist or did not exist at the time the president made that appointment in March, at the end of March 2022, then you would have had a different story. But in these circumstances, there was an alternative, and there was nothing that was emergent that could have justified the use of that doctrine.
Roysdale, let me bring you in here. Do you have anything to add? Because I think this is a very important question, not just for this case, but as you say, for young people who are practicing law, young people who intend to get into the law, and for our general public, because this is not the first time in recent developments in Guyana that we have already stormed the doctrine of necessity. It seems to me as if the government is pulling this doctrine of necessity nearly, willy-nilly, because during the election campaign, the 5 months, as they say, we all talk about we have to have a government in place and the doctrine of necessity. Is the doctrine of necessity meant to be kicked around people's whims and fancy?
No, certainly not, Dr. Hines. The doctrine of necessity is an important part and is a recognized part of the law. But the doctrine of necessity is a common law doctrine. And the Constitution is a superior law to the common law. As a matter of fact, the Constitution says very early in the Constitution that any other law is void to the extent of its inconsistency with the Constitution. So imagine, Dr. Hines, how illogical and mindless it is for the president of this republic to stand up and to say that he is relying on the common law doctrine of necessity to override the constitutional provisions. If you write that in an exam, and I don't blame the Irfan Ali, I blame Nandalal. If you write that in an exam and you submit that to Keith Messiah, who was our constitutional law professor, he would not even respond to you back with a grade. That is beyond an F. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous proposition that is being advanced by the President of the Republic after being advised, obviously, by his Attorney General. So I can't seem to capture anything that explains the ridiculous proposition more accurately than that. You know, one of the important things which would have underscored the discussions that Selwyn and I had that informed the filing of this challenge is Pakistan itself. You know, I have read a number of academic papers on the destruction of Pakistan's democracy, and it started by the continuous reliance on this supposed doctrine of necessity. Shortly after independence in Pakistan, they had coup after coup, manipulation of the constitution repeatedly, and it ended up being so far away from what the constitution required or ordained by relying on the doctrine of necessity that it ultimately led to the implosion, continuous implosion, and the utter destruction of the constitutional state of Pakistan as conceived by the founders. So we thought about all of these things, and these are some of the things that I'm now expressing to the public to understand the sort of analysis that goes in to filing these matters. You know, you have to understand what it is that you're dealing with, and if it is allowed to happen, is it such a breach that you could consider it a minor breach, or is it such a major breach that, and if you come to the conclusion it's a major breach, what would be the repercussions in the society at large? And this could well have been the commencement of the continuous reliance on the doctrine of necessity. There's nothing after you would have invoked this doctrine, Dr. Hines, to stop Irfan Ali tomorrow from saying that today is Independence Day, and guess what I've decided? I have now decided that I'm going to appoint the Chancellor and the Chief Justice because we can't find to have a resolution of the issue. We need to have an agreement. We must have a Chancellor. We must have a Chief Justice. So I'm going to appoint one. And then we could go on to the issue of the police service commissions. I met with Aubrey Norton. I met with Roysdale Forde, two members of the opposition. They're now telling me this and that. I don't like this and that. I'm now going to use the doctrine of necessity. I'm going to appoint all. So why stop with the commissioner of police? Go on, Mr. Ali, continue. So that is the sort of ridiculous avenues, the poor pathways that we're going down.
And I'm glad you raised that, Roysdale, because one has to make a distinction between the use of the doctrine of necessity and the president's emergency powers. If the Constitution grants the president emergency powers, that's okay. Lots of constitutions do that. But to use the doctrine of necessity as if it's an emergency power granted to you is really the optimum of a breach of constitution and democracy. In my class, I would ask my students, if they were to look at this case, to tell me if the president did not appoint Mr. Higgins what would have happened to the state? Would the state have been undermined? Would there have been eruptions in Guyana? You must justify. If you're using the doctrine of necessity, you have to say, from a political science standpoint, whether if you did not invoke the doctrine of necessity, the state would have unraveled. And clearly, this is not the case. And so I think your points are well taken. Let me juxtapose this charge of doctrine of necessity to the charge that is made of the opposition by the government side, that you all are abusing judicial review. And I want to get both you and Selwyn in on this. Selwyn, are you there? Yes, Selwyn is coming in. Is there such a thing as an abuse of justice judicial review? And if so, are you all abusing judicial review going to the court on these issues?
No, there is a concept of abuse of process, but there's a test to be met when you're speaking about abuse of process. If you're challenging the exercise of a power or a purported power that the president claimed to have and exercise, that is justiciable. And so in the circumstances, a court would find that, the appointment, for example, we asked for an order in the nature of quo warranto for Hicken to produce his instrument of appointment, to cite that specific case we're talking about tonight. Because if the president feels that he has this authority to appoint Hicken as commissioner, why hasn't he gazetted that appointment? Why hasn't this appointment been published in the Gazette? It's nowhere to be found in the Gazette. The instrument is not published in the Chronicle or anywhere else. When they passed the Natural Resource Fund, the Gazette that the president signed the following day, the gazetted order, was all over the newspapers and everywhere else. Abuse of process is a concept in law that applies to the clearest of cases that has no merit and that is meant to abuse the processes of the court. And none of these cases, whether it's the Paul Slow case challenging the president's unlawful and illegal suspension of that police service commission, or the Natural Resources Fund, where they failed to consult with citizens and acted in the absence of the mace, or the Hicken case, where they opportunistically and unlawfully used the doctrine of necessity to override a constitutional requirement. None of those cases can be classified on any test as an abuse of process or a use of judicial review for a case that clearly does not fit within the prescription of the jurisdiction of the court.
Roysdale Forde, your take? Abuse of judicial review, abuse of process here?
I don't think that I could add more what Selwyn said. Selwyn accurately summed up the governing principles. There's no basis for concluding that any of the cases that we have filed are lacking in merit. And the very fact that it raises such serious constitutional issues justifies the courts entertaining them and discussing and coming to a conclusion.
Yeah. Roysdale, let me go back to the point of emergency that I raised there just now, because I noticed some of our viewers have picked up on it. Was there a state of emergency that would have pushed the president to reach for this doctrine of necessity? And what's the relationship between between emergency and this doctrine of necessity?
Dr. Hanks, the exercise of an emergency power is an exercise of a power that exists under the Constitution. to deal with situations not specifically provided for in terms of how it should be handled. The doctrine of necessity cannot be used to operate in conflict with or to provide an alternative regime for the exercise of powers ultra vires or the whores the Constitution. So, for example, Dr. Hines, during the period of the prominence of the pandemic, President Granger decided that having regard to what is happening in this country here, this is a serious situation. I am going to exercise the powers conferred upon me, not only as the president of the country, but under previous sort of colonial regulations that governing public health. So in the exercise of that power, he decided that he was going to make certain orders. Also, Dr. Hines, the Constitution recognizes that your fundamental rights and the rights you have are subject to the exercise of emergency powers to deal with situations which no law provides for or for which a situation is one that we cannot reasonably contemplate. So you exercise your emergency powers, you decide that you will put regulations in place for mass, etc., social distancing, and so on. And that is an exercise of a legitimate exercise of a emergency power. On the other hand, the doctrine of necessity does not come into play there because you exercising legal powers. The emergency powers are sort of reserve powers under the law, under the existing law. So I hope that I would have answered your question, dear doctor.
Oh yes, certainly. A good evening to you, you there in the audience, and sometimes we go to classes, as you know, this is politics 101. There's a relationship, sometimes causal relationship between politics and the law. I often tell my students that because sometimes students will say, "Well, Dr. Hines, why are we doing all these cases?" But that the relationship between law and politics is really important. And tonight we are getting a lesson here in the law and how it applies to our everyday politics. Brothers, before I let you all go, we didn't come here tonight to talk about the issue that I'm going to raise now, but I want to get your legal take on this case. And I'm talking about the Sinead Wallace case, whereby the DPP has discontinued charge that was the private charges was brought by Bullis on our behalf by our lawyer. And the DPP first did not give a reason. Then she gave a reason, and she's saying that the case brought was not consistent with the law. I want to get you all take on it as lawyers. I'll start with you first, Selvin.
Well, I don't have much to say about the Sinead Wallace case, and simply, I'm not saying much because I don't know very much about the case. And the lawyer that's dealing with the case is a brilliant lawyer and also academic, UC Anderson. He's a Cambridge University educated lawyer in Guyana. So I have no doubt that Mr. Anderson is going to represent her well, and that whatever steps he needs to take to provide justice to the particular complainant will be done. That's all I can say in the circumstances.
Roysdale?
Dr. Hines, I would say a bit more than Selvin. I believe that the DPP ought not to have intervened in this matter. That she has the power to do so. Certainly, we cannot deny that the DPP is imbued with the necessary authority to do what she would have done. So I'm not getting into the legal argument whether she should have done that, right, Dr. Hines, or whether she have the power to do it.
Right.
But I'm saying the exercise. A lot of the problems we have in this country is about the exercise of power, and I believe that in this situation, the DPP should not have exercised her power at all in this matter for a number of reasons. Firstly, I believe that after the allegation would have been made against the accused in this situation, that the DPP did not act. That is the first telling thing, I believe, in the face of all the public outcry. Secondly, private criminal legal proceedings had to be instituted. At that point, the DPP decided that she was going to act. Um, Even if the DPP is correct in terms of her analysis of the reasons underpinning her decision, that the Racial Hostilities Act didn't cover this situation and so on. One of the things that I found very strange about the decision of the DPP is that when you read the statements of Ms. Ballers, what is out there publicly, right? So I don't know the nitty gritty, but based on what I would have read or been aware of, I found it amazing that the DPP would have withdrawn these charges and on the face of the allegations made by Ms. Ballers, not recognize that in them are serious allegations for which should be the basis of criminal proceedings or possibly criminal proceedings. So you may not feel that it fits under the Racial Hostilities Act, but it's another thing to say by your omission to institute further proceedings or to advise that further proceedings be instituted by the law enforcement authority of the state, to do nothing after. And I believe that that shows a certain degree of insensitivity, not only to the legal community, but to the social and racial considerations and underpinnings that exist that seek to engulf these issues. And I believe the DPP would have added, unfortunately, I keep using this word tonight because, you could use other stronger words. But when I say unfortunate, it carries a certain degree of weight for me. And I believe that the DPP should not have intervened in this matter. I believe it was a very sad situation. The factors that led to it, as explained by Ms. Ballers, if she's being truthful, I don't know. I wasn't there. But I believe at the end of the day, the court is the best place to have these matters resolved. And if, as the DPP, you felt that the continuation or the prosecution of these cases would constitute a waste of magisterial time and court time, on the face of it, if you stepped in to do that, at the same time, you should have gone through the facts, come to the conclusion that possibly there is in it the basis for other proceedings and advise. Because from what the DPP would have said, Dr. Hines, she seemed to have come to a dead end. This has nothing to do with Racial Hostility Act, full stop, end of matter. I'm out of here. I'm done with this. And I believe that that is the sort of response that seeks to further divide Guyana more than it brings Guyana together.
Yeah, thanks, Roysdale, for that explanation. Roysdale, about 5 or 6 people are asking here. Dr. Hines, please ask Mr. Roysdale Forde, what is the status of petition 99? Thank you. Oswin, Anthony, others, Diane, I think they're all asking.
Well, Dr. Hines, I'm in a position to inform them that the matter is coming up on the 31st of May. In the morning, the CCJ has scheduled a case management conference. And on the case management conference day, the court will outline the timelines for the submissions of the respective parties and for a hearing date. So on the 31st, we'll be able to say that we have started the process of hearing the election petition appeal filed by Nandalal and Barajabio. Once again, I want to thank the public for the support and for the prayers and for the cooperation. And I want to remind them also that this is a very important case. We are doing the work. Up to today, I spoke to Mr. John Jeremy, Senior Counsel, who will be taking over the presentation before the CCJ. I did the Court of Appeal aspect of it. He will now take over the CCJ aspect of it and lead in that way as I led in the Court of Appeal. And we hope that we will emerge successful.
Thank you very much, Roysdale, and I hope you all come back, because as you notice, there is really an active interest in these legal matters. I've had cause on a few occasions in recent times to point out that the way in which the last 2 years have contributed towards a grassroots interest in the law and legal matters is fascinating for me. I've never seen this kind of development at any point in my long 5 decades of observation of behaviors in Guyana. So please come back to keep our audience updated on these cases. Selwyn, where is the case regarding Mr. Paul Slow is at the moment? They want to know that too.
Well, we argued appeal filed by Mr. Nandlal last month, and we were supposed to get a decision on the 20th. We didn't receive the decision on the 20th. The registrar of Justice Sunarayan Bihari wrote us telling us we were going to get a decision today. We didn't get the decision today. Tomorrow is a holiday in Guyana. So we're in waiting mode. I mean, the client is disappointed. I'm disappointed. I mean, the court set timelines, and the court hasn't met its timelines. It wrote us this morning telling us it's going to release a decision. Didn't release the decision today. So we have no idea what's going on in the background of the court. But it doesn't augur well where we have these delays and the vacillations and so on in the background of the courts, for which the litigants have no knowledge as to why the court didn't release its decision on the 20th, why it wrote us this morning telling us it's releasing a decision today and the decision wasn't released. So, we're in a waiting game, and I'm sorry, that's all I can tell you right now.
Yes.
It doesn't inspire confidence in the administration of justice or the court processes when the court does this.
Yes. All right, brothers. Roysdale, anything that you want to say that I didn't ask?
Yes, Dr. Hines, I just wanted to answer in relation to the second election petition. Yes. That is currently still in the Court of Appeal. We're trying to have that appeal heard. It has been almost 18 months since the decision would have been delivered by the Chief Justice, and we're awaiting a written decision from her. So once we are in a possession of that written decision, or the Court of Appeal is in possession of that written decision, we will then have to proceed to the hearing of that appeal. But that is what is holding up the preparation of the record and the case management conference at this time in relation to that appeal.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Roysdale Forde, Mr. Selwyn Peters, attorneys at law representing the Chief Whip in this case, challenging the constitutionality of the appointment of the acting commissioner of police. Thank you all very much, brothers, for coming through.
I just wanted to add that Mr. Witter is a party to that case, and Mr. Witter's role must not be overlooked. Mr. Witter brings with him to these proceedings the role of civil society and the failure of the government to engage in consultation with civil society organizations, which form a critical part of our civil society, of the community as a whole, and is one of the important limbs upon which the litigation was founded.
Sorry about that omission. I missed Mr. Witter's name. I know he's part of the NRF case, but I didn't know he was part of this case too.
No, he's part of the NRF case with Mr. Jones also.
With Christopher Jones, right? Okay, all right, all brothers, and next week Tuesday, we are expecting the case management arrangements to be taking place at the CCJ, and then we'll have Roysdale come back to give us an update. And Selwyn, as soon as the court wakes up, please give me a call so that I can have you back, so that we can assess whatever decision the court brings down. Thank you all very much, brothers, and happy independence.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hanks.
Attorneys at law there, Roysdale Forde and Selwyn Peters, speaking tonight on that case, challenging the constitutionality of the appointment of Clifton Ickens. Let me go straight to my next guest, Lincoln Lewis. Lincoln, good evening, and sorry to keep you waiting, but we had a 45 minutes delay at the start. So we are a little bit late on bringing you in. But tonight we want to talk about Village Voice, the Village Voice newspaper. And let me start by asking you, what's the genesis of that newspaper? Are you hearing me? I'm not hearing you. We're not hearing you.
Yeah.
We're talking yes.
The idea on this paper was aborted on the 5th of March 2020. It was, if you observe, it was only a couple of days after the last national and regional elections. And one of the what led to it is we look at the media landscape, the print media primarily, and we recognize something that all the print media were galloping in one direction. Months before and immediately after the election, there was just one rhetoric was carried in. And that rhetoric, to a large extent, set out to demonize a group in society. And it is that led to the idea of forming an alternative media, which will give another group, the group that is that the media houses that set out to marginalize, an opportunity to express their opinions without fear or favor. So that is what really started with the Voice. We started online for some time, and then after that, the call was made that we go to the newsstand. Now we're on the newsstand. It is over important that we understand something, that we cannot retreat, we cannot surrender, because Village Voice is the only newspaper, those who are marginalized, those who live in communities like Itika, like Buxton, like Belladrum, like Dartmouth. It is the only newspaper that is going to carry the alternative opinion, unadulterated, as it relates to what is taking place in the society. And that is where we are. And I want to tell you that the support has been good, but we look at it that it needs to get better. Yes.
The newspapers are like any newspaper, its challenges, and one of the major challenges is attracting advertisement, both from the government and from the private sector. The audience obviously would know that, or should know, that it is very difficult for a newspaper to survive without government advertisement in in Guyana. Our private sector is a small private sector. Our private sector is a very political private sector because of our ethnic situation. How, as Village Voice, therefore, survived and is surviving in the context of little or no act from the government and from the private sector.
Let me tell you this, that when you call people in the private sector and they talk with the representatives of Village Voice and they say they'll get back to you, and you try to get back to them, they don't answer their calls. But what we've recognized, that many of the persons may say to you one-on-one, look, by we can't, let me tell you the truth, we can't advertise in Village Voice. If we advertise in Village Voice and we're doing any business with the government, they will take that business away. So there is where we are. While some people you may have the sympathies of some people, they are afraid to definitely advertise with Village Voice. We have not had any government ads. Let me give you one. We have been able to get a few ads from the Election Commission. But since you have got a new, what we call it, a new CEO, those ads dry up. Nothing after them. That is the type of challenge that we face. This guy is not prepared to use the people's money to advertise with media houses that are prepared to hold the government accountable. They see this as
they perceive as not being friendly to the government. So how the newspaper's been relying on sales, but sales in itself cannot keep the newspaper going. What about contributions from readers both in Guyana and overseas?
We need to do very much more. We need to be, what we are looking for is more contribution, voluntary contribution from the community that this newspaper services. We have been able to get a few small contributions from overseas, and we are grateful for them. But on the ground here, people are afraid to touch this paper by making.
What do you mean by afraid to touch the paper? The paper is being sold, right?
Yes. But when I say that, to advertise,
yes, we've talked about
the important thing here. Yeah. The important thing here, the ads is what will carry this paper.
Yeah, but right? we got that. We got that. I'm talking here. We have a captive audience. How can this audience help to keep Village Voice alive?
Look, I want to tell you this. If we can get from the diaspora primarily a contribution of $1 per week from from people who live like United States, England, and so forth. $1 or £1.
Because one newspaper in Guyana costs $200, which is about the equivalent of $1. So we are asking if you, our loyal listeners, at a minimum, can contribute $4 per month to Village Voice for the next 3 months. So we're asking for a minimum of $12 for the next quarter. $12 for the next, a minimum. If you can afford more, yes, but a minimum of $12 for the next quarter to keep Village Voice alive. You're paying there for one paper each weekend, $12. It will go a long way. If the operator could put on the screen the Cash App handle and the Cash App handle, which is $BUXT, and the PayPal handle. Mr. Operator, can you put those up? We are asking for the next quarter, if you can go to Cash App right now. Right now, go to Cash App. We're waiting on the operator to put up the handle, but it's $BUXT. $BUXT. That's the Cash App handle. And make a donation of $12, a minimum of $12. That will cover your contribution for the next 3 months, the next quarter. It will help tremendously. Please, we have
what that comes to, David, is $1 per week. $1 per week. We're not asking you what other agencies may ask you to pay. What we asking you for, just $1. This paper need to be owned by the people whose opinion means something to us. It must be owned by these people. It must be,
Yes.
you know, we must go there and say, this is ours. Let me tell you what. It is the only newspaper that is being owned or is owned by the people who are marginalized, who can't go to the next paper and tell them what they must write. You know, you know, there are times when I look at what the comments on the paper. You put up an article and people will say, you need to take on board the opinion of the constituency that you represent, who buy this paper. And those are things that the editorial and other people look at.
Orin is saying there, peaceful back that Orin thing there. You can ask Guyanese businesses overseas in London, United States, Canada, and other countries. Look, you all are, a lot of you all old businesses. And you can take out an advertisement in the Village Voice because people overseas read Village Voice. So you'll be advertising your business. If you own a business in Brooklyn, lots of people from Brooklyn are on this program. You can advertise your businesses and programs like these on Village Voice, in the Village Voice, so that you can contribute, right? So if you own a business, you can contact the Village Voice for advertisement, but you can make a contribution on behalf of your business, all right? So please, a minimum of $12 for the next 3 months. This is May. So your $12 will cover your contribution to June, July, August. Locally, how could you make a contribution? Mr. Lewis, give us the number so that they can put it up on the screen where people can call and get information to make their contribution.
226-2481.
226-2481. Please write that number down and call tomorrow. 226. Well, tomorrow is a holiday, but call on Friday.
While it's an holiday.
Hold on, Lincoln. Hold on. 226-2481. Mr. Operator, we are waiting to see these numbers on the screen. We're waiting for the PayPal link. If you can put them on the Cash App handle, so that people will see where they have to make this contribution. Go ahead, Lincoln.
You can call Joycelyn at this time. She will answer that phone. That phone works for 24 hours.
There you go. Village Voice phone 226-2481. It's a 24 hours phone. You can call anytime. If you are in Guyana and you want to make a contribution, vibrate 226-2481. Here we go. Finally, we have the handle put up here. Please, there you go. Cash App, $BUXT. Do that right now. Do that right now. A minimum of $12. But if you have $5, if you have $7, if you have $10, make your contribution. Make your contribution. And there's the PayPal side. dine6106@aol.com. Keep that on the screen. Listen, I've said this wherever I go. We have to invest in our institutions. We cannot fight the struggle without the media. If there were no Politics 101, Bostonian Morning Time, Straight Up, Below the Belt, Rickford Box program, Gavin Matthews program, if there were not these programs, think where we would have been. Think where we would have been. There was no Village Voice. And we have to keep these programs and this newspaper alive. We have to invest. We are not millionaires, but some of us may have businesses. Please contribute. Please make a contribution so that we can keep this struggle going. We have to get in the habit. Those who we are fighting, they're flush with money. Their supporters contribute to their institutions. They use government money in order to fight us. We don't have access to state money. We don't have access to state ads. We don't have access to advertisement from the
state agency.
And so we depend on you, the ordinary people, to help to keep our institutions going. And I know that we are in the African Guyanese community. I know that we have reservations sometimes about making contributions to causes because we would have had bad experiences. But this is serious business. We are talking about boots on the ground. We are talking about fighting the PPP. Look, tonight, we had the opportunity of hearing from two lawyers explaining the law, explaining the cases. You get that here in Politics 101. Tomorrow morning, you will tune in to Bostonian Morning Time. Kidaki gives you the breaking news. He exposes what's happening. Mark Benchop at 9 o'clock tonight. So please, please, I'm pleading with you. Here is what we are doing in exchange for the Village Voice. In exchange for the Village Voice, bringing you news and analysis. Please make your small contribution. Lots of y'all live in the United States. You know the power of small contribution. So if you're in Guyana, call 226-2481. If you're overseas, right there on the screen, $BUXT, and PayPal, it has their DHINDS6106@AOL.com. That's if you do PayPal. So please, please make your contribution so that your children would not have to ask you 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when Village Voice was up against it, what did you do? And you tell them, I did nothing. You'll be able to tell them that this Village Voice that you are seeing here in the year 2035, when it was struggling in 2020, I made my contribution to keep it alive. I made my contribution. So please go to your Cash App right now, go to your PayPal. I know some people are somewhat suspicious of these online transfers and so on. Email me, inbox me, and we can arrange alternative means of getting this contribution to Village Voice. I can tell you, it's a minimum of $300,000. That is $1,500 US to print the Village Voice every week, a minimum of $1,500. Please make your contribution. Lincoln Lewis, anything to add?
Let me tell you, David, I have seen, let me give you an example of a lady who came yesterday to see me. She said she's 91 years of age, and she came with a glass bottle. Those bottles, like it's a nut bottle, and all she had inside here was things like $10. We have coins primarily. She said, "This is what I can give." I hear early on the television. She said, "This is all I can give, these coins." She said, "I told them, let's see what we can do them, because we got to keep Village Voice going." That is the type of.
That is such a moving story. I want to thank Terry, Moses, Calvin, Peggy, my sister. Thank you, Egerton, who is always on. Mark, the two Marks, Mark C and Mark G. My goodness, Mark G has given us a raise here. He's a business person, a businessman. I'm not calling his full name because I don't have the permission. But Mark G has given us a contribution of $500. Say that. A business person, a contribution of $500. Thank you so much, my brother. Andrew, thank you. Yuri, who is a regular, thank you. June, thank you for your contribution. And my brother, friend from Buxton, Washington, D.C., Peter B. Peter, thank you so much for your generous contribution. Come on, the rest of us can help. Please help with this drive. We call it a telethon. We plan to do it every 3 months. So you make your contribution here to cover you for the next 3 months. And so thank you all so much who have come on here. Miss C, Delineaye. Don't want to call it, but this person made a contribution when we were on Mark Benchup's show, and she's making another contribution here. Thank you so much. Josh, thank you for your contribution. And as we say, Lincoln, as we say, 1-1 Dotty, build down. 1-1.
That is where you come from, country, by.
Yes, and we have got to support our own. We got to support our own. This struggle, what I say, man shall not live by bread alone. Right? You have to have the Holy Ghost to go with it. Right? And the Holy Ghost means that we got to contribute. We got to get into that habit. We have to get into that habit. We make the sacrifices. We write for Village Voice without pay. But we have got to pay journalists. We have got to pay reporters. We've got to pay people to design the paper. We've got to pay people to upload the paper. We've got to maintain the website. We've got to pay the people in the office for waking up in the mornings at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock and to go and collect that paper from the printers, to wrap those papers and to deliver them to the vendors in time for the papers to be understand. These are women who are leaving their children in the morning at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Go there and make sure that those papers are there. We have journalists, reporters who have to, in this hard guava season, be running after stories. A lot of them are women who are making the sacrifices to bring this newspaper to you. Please let us do our small part. Lincoln Lewis.
The sacrifices of this paper, I've seen the women really come into their own and walk the journey with us. There are people in communities like Itika, Uptong, and even United States who have come along with us, you know. I want to encourage them, don't give up on us. Do not give up on us. This people belong to the community. It belongs to us. We have to make sure that down the road, that group of people who saying that a certain people can run anything, we must shut them out. We must run this paper and make sure that it survives, and we all must live. History must write us differently. I want to thank those who have contributed tonight, contributed before. I want to say that we are grateful for your help. It is important that we do it.
And
yes,
thank you
David.
very much. Thank you very much, Lincoln, for coming on. We were a little bit late tonight, and so we'll have to bring you back. Some of our viewers left early because, you know, they have to go to other programs, and so they missed the telethon. But probably tomorrow night, we're going to have you back for those who left early. Tomorrow night, we're going to have an independence program. We have Kathy Hughes on. Ralph Ramkaran is going to on. I think Professor Thomas is going to be on. A lecturer at the University of Guyana, Mr. Dwayne Benjamin, will be on. We'll be talking about independence, observing our independence, because it's our independence. Mr. Lincoln Lewis will bring you on tomorrow. Make sure we get you on early. So for those who left early, they will be able to contribute. To those of you who have contributed tonight, a big thanks to all of you for answering the call. And those of you who couldn't get to the WhatsApp thing right now because you may be driving or you may be at the bar, as soon as you get the opportunity, $BUXT, it's here. The PayPal link is here. And for you in Guyana, 226 2481. Lincoln Lewis, thank you very much. Thank you very much for what you do. We know you as a trade unionist, but as we have to do in our community, we have to get our hands, get ourselves into all kinds of things. You know, you are a trade unionist, I'm a lecturer, right? But we are into newspapers, we are into organizing on the ground, because this work has to be done. As I always say, my village, Buxton, has been good to me. Guyana has been good to me. The Caribbean has been good to me. And I have to be good to you, the people. I have to be good to Guyana in return. I have to be good to the Caribbean. I have to be good to Black people. I've got to be good to my village. And as I said last night, next week, we are burying my aunt, Jean Gordon from Buxton. She's the mother of Orrin Gordon, former interim management committee chair of Linden for years. He was his REO of Linden recently. His mother, Jean Gordon, my auntie, she passed away. And we are dedicating these shows to her this week because she has been a mother to me, an inspiration to me. And people like myself could not be here without the Auntie Jean. So our children, Orrin, Robert, Bobby, those of you from Buxton know Bobby, who owns the taxi base, Yvette, Rontwell, and Otis. To our children, on behalf of Politics 101, my condolences, and to all of us, the extended family. Pray with us as we bury our dead. She has lived a long life, and while she did not scale the heights that she might have scaled if she had the opportunity, she made sure that our children, our nieces and our nephews scale those heights. And so we pay homage to her as we pay homage to all the mothers and the fathers who have lived this life and are passing on to the great beyond. Thank you so much. Again, tomorrow night, Independence program, and I'll see you all. Good night. Politics is the heartbeat of a nation. It's not always pleasant, you know. Politics can be very nasty, as we know. But politics is necessary, it's essential. Politics is about who gets what, when, and how. And although it's a nasty thing sometimes, we have to turn it into something that is pleasant. And on Politics 101, we try to do that. We try to engage the issues. We try to ask questions. More than that, we are mobilizing our people because, you know, information and knowledge are essential to a functioning society, to a functioning democracy. Democracy is not just about elections and good governance. It's also about an informed citizen, an informed people. And that's what we do on Politics 101. We try to inform you, but we do so not by just giving raw information. We do so by a critical analysis. We ask questions. We locate the present in the past, and we locate the past in the present. We strive to turn Guyana into another kind of society. Our quest at independence is always freedom, and Politics 101 is about that freedom journey.